Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dirty Money, and we got a cool show for you. My name's Mike. I'm back like I never left, and we're going to go into a few different subjects that were going on today. One of them is a $300 million supercomputer Britain's building for AI. American Airlines is trying to steal pilots from FedEx. We'll jump into that. And then we're going to look at the five most expensive books in the world. There's one in there that kind of blew my mind. And then 95% of all rare earth metals right now are coming out of China. And today they said that that's going to stop. Also, we're going to get into what Nestle's new food delivery startup is, and then $1 million Uber scam. And then we're also going to look at the largest buried treasure haul in the history of the world. Since you're here, please give us a 5 star for the download on the podcast. And if you're interested in certain topics that you want me to research and dive into, please put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to dig into them and figure them out. But to get everything started, we're going to look at this $300 million supercomputer fund that's coming from Great Britain. So the program is actually called AI Research Resource. They originally decided as a country they were going to put $100 million into upgrading their public supercomputers for Great Britain. Now, I, I think this is just some public way of saying how they're spending money. I mean, they have military, they have this, that, and the other thing, and I want to say that they have supercomputers that they spent more than $300 million on, and that's the amount that they upped the 100 million to is 300 million. So Rishi Sunak said, he's the Prime Minister of Great Britain, said this investment will make sure Britain's scientific talent have the tools that they need to make the most advanced models of AI safe. Now, by doing this, he's going to increase their public supercomputers by 30 times, which is pretty impressive. But when you look at the larger scope of things for AI investment, collectively, the United States in the last decade has put over $250 billion into AI development. Companies like Chat GPT and things like that. But you can see here, that super tower, look to the left, that's the amount of money the US is donated, not donated, but put in collectively to advance AI technology. And then you have every other country below there. The next closest one obviously is China, but then the UK, so we're dwarfing everyone. So the real growth that you're seeing, I think, in AI is definitely coming from the United States. How we're actually spending that money is a little bit differently because a lot of it's private sector. It's not the US putting bills forward to create this and that. It's Microsoft committing $10 billion to OpenAI, and a lot of different other companies that are taking place there. So it's pretty interesting to think that, $300 million they think is enough to actually try to be safe on the AI. I mean, I feel like the Terminator is going to be able to get through the AI firewall for $300 million, no problem. Speaking of the some other things is that if you're looking at the whole perspective for AI development and overall usage, like what is Great Britain going to do to actually make AI safe, like it with a supercomputer? I feel like unless you have some kind of strategic structure inside of your country to limit the development or to monitor the development of that AI, all you're doing is just throwing more money into the fire, you know? And talk about throwing more money into the fire. American Airlines is actually throwing $250,000 at any FedEx pilot who wants to come and fly for them. This is a really crazy subject. Really, $250,000. So if you're a pilot, you fly for FedEx, and you are willing to come over to American Airlines and fly their planes, they will give you a $250,000 bonus. They will literally, your first check, you'll see $175,000 added to it, and you'll get $75,000 after the 1 year. So if you think about it, the guys, I don't know exactly how many that have come over. That's not public, but you know, that's a year's salary for a pilot coming over. So they're literally going to give you your whole salary up front. You go buy a house, depending on where you're at in the country, just with that bonus check. So it's really aggressive behavior, and it makes me think that they're cutthroat. And then I started to really look into it, and the problem that we're actually having is almost systemic in the airline industry, is because the pilots that typically flew in the airlines prior to drones were actually military trained pilots, and so there would be an ample amount of people coming out of the military that understood how to fly and do things like that. So we had that, and now we don't have that anymore. So there's not that many available pilots because all the drones that are created, and we have drone operators. So it's pretty interesting to think that really this isn't stemmed from the American Airlines just being like, "Hey, I'm going to come steal your people." It's like there's a shortage of pilots all across the United States because we just don't have as many we're creating from the military. Another thing is that COVID did have an effect on early retirements, but at the end of it, when you really look at it, is FedEx might not be in that much trouble with this because they're actually losing money right now with their air freight because they're actually going down the demand. So it's kind of like almost a win-win for FedEx, even though it sounds pretty crazy that American Airlines puts up 250K. I wonder if they would have said like 150K or 100K if it would have made a budge. Who had American Airlines decided that $250,000 was worth one pilot of 1 year service? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be something in the contract that says they can't leave after the year, but I mean, 175 grand, and then after 1 year, you're paid up. I wonder what the contract does say, or maybe it's worth it for them to get $250,000. They can get more flights out. There's lots of cancellations. If you haven't been flying this year, you know that flights get canceled all the time. People get bumped. It's pretty ridiculous, actually, now. Um, so I'd be curious to see what any of the American Airlines contracts look like for those FedEx pilots. Do they have a non-compete? Are they required? Do they have to pay back the money? You know, it's pretty interesting to really think about how the structure would work there to make that financially successful for American Airlines. I think they could have probably lowballed it and got a little bit better on the number. Um, Speaking of numbers, the bigger the number for the book, the crazier it is. So right now, I want to go through the five most expensive books. Now, number five on this list, this is a real book. It's called The Rothschild's Prayer Book. I mean, blew my mind when I even found out this book exists. This book sold for 13.9 million in 2014. Carrie Stokes bought it at a Christie's auction, and it's now on display in the National Library of Australia. But it is the Rothschilds prayer book. I mean, we all know about the theories with the Rothschilds, this, that, and the other thing, but to have a book that sells for almost $14 million, that's your family's prayer book. Like it's just kind of mind blowing. Number four on the list is the base Psalm book at 14.5 million. It was sold in 2014, but the unique thing about the base Psalm book is that there's 11 copies of this book in the world, and they were printed in 1640. And it's a religious text, but the unique thing about the religious text is that it's actually describes early colonial life, which is really unique, I thought. Number three on the list is the Saint Cuthbert Gospel. This is actually the oldest surviving European book. It was created in the 7th century, and it sold for $15.1 million in 2011. It's a pretty rare book here as well. Now, some people might argue that the number two spot on this list should go to the Magna Carta. Um, I don't think it should go to the Magna Carta. The actual number, 'cause it's not really a book; it's a piece of paper. Uh, the number two on the list I have is the Gospels of Henry the Lion Order of Saint Benedict, and that it came in $28 million in 1983. It's owned by the German government, and it's another religious text. It depicts the life and teachings of Jesus. And last but not least, the number one on the list for the most expensive books in the world is the Kodak Leicester Leonardo da Vinci. Is sold for $30.8 million in 1994 to none other than Bill Gates. And it's pretty interesting. It's a collection of scientific writings by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's named after Thomas Coke, Earl of Leicester. I can't say that word. Who purchased it in 1717. Um, so that book has been, purchased a few different times. Uh, in 1994, when the manuscript was last sold at the Christie's auction in New York, it was sold for $30 million, like I was saying. But it was the most expensive manuscript ever sold. But the thing about it in a different perspective is that book in today's money is $60 million, and it was only 30 years ago that it was sold. 28 years ago. So our money has lost half of its value in 30 years. Mind blowing. How does that even happen? You got to really ask yourself, how did we lose half the value of our money in 30 years when before 1910, 1912, inflation really didn't exist? A shilling was a loaf of bread for 100 years. So it's pretty unique to think like our money's lost that much value in 30 years. We're literally going down 3% every year. So the money you made and saving money, unless you have it invested, you're losing money. Speaking of losing money, China, who is now becoming an expert at losing money and actually cooking their books to make people believe they have money. If you're not familiar with the recent real estate crisis, look it up. I did a show on it previously. And they've now said they will tighten reporting controls on strategic rare earth elements, according to its commerce ministry, in a move that could choke off America's supply of critical minerals used in the production of electric cars and missiles. Hmm. Uniquely, they put this out in the last couple of days. Um and and so China currently makes 90% of all of the rare earth metals. The entire market for the rare earth metals in China, uh they produce 90%. So the world right now has about 5.3 billion a year annually that is created for the rare earths market. And the largest mineral mine, rare earth mineral mine in China, is a is covers roughly over 30 square miles. I mean, when you're talking about mining and destroying places for minerals, uh, that's definitely how it's done. I mean, if you look at just the size of this thing, it's just ridiculously massive mine in China. I mean, there it is. You can see that it's just like it's mind blowing how how big this is. There's like a little city over there next to it. So then the biggest one. Now that place produces uh, roughly 90 tons, 90,000 tons of rare earth metals a year, and then there's only one rare earth mine in the United States, and it produces about 26,000 tons of rare earth metals. We import about $200 million a year in these metals to our country. Now, we buy up a lot more than that, but they're manufactured and then we bring them in as a manufactured product, microchips, um, different car batteries, things like that. So it's really interesting to look at the whole picture and understand that as a country, China's got a firm actual hold on this. And the only reason that they have that hold is because they have operational mines. It's not like they're the only place in the world where these rare earth metals exist. It's like they're the only ones that have mobilized their people to strip the earth for that, So that's the reason why they're the leaders. Now, I think over the next, you know, probably 10 years, you're going to see that decline quite a bit. But currently, the total, the rare earth market's going to double in 5 years for money. So as we start to see more growth for electrical needs like solar panels and green energy, which uses tons of rare earth metals, it kind of contradicts the whole concept because you spend all this money trying to dig it up, and then you really want to try to figure out how it's all going to come together. Um, but talking about pouring a bunch of money into something, Nestle's going to pour $100 million into a food delivery startup. They definitely saw DoorDash and Uber Eats and said, I wonder how we can get in. And they're doing it with the Wonder Group. So, how many food trucks do you think can fit into Nestle's 600-acre global headquarters in the Swiss town of Vevey? I don't know. We're probably going to see a whole bunch, but that's going to be more in the US, I think. Nestle's invested a lot into it, and they really plan to work closely with places like uh, hospitals, sports venues, hotels, more commercially based food delivery. Um, so there is a little bit of disparity and inflection points. So there's a little bit going on, but like Wonder Group acquired Blue Apron for $103 million in September. So it's looking beyond like the normal delivery of just say DoorDash, Uber, and other companies that are doing food delivery. So it's pretty unique that they're gonna spend $100 million. I really think you're gonna have to spend a lot more to make a food delivery service come together. Unless you're looking from strictly a commercial side, you're gonna need advertising. You need $100 million just to build out the advertising budget to really reach out to the consumer if that's the road that they're going down. Um, but speaking of Uber, I don't know if you guys know, but have you heard about the Uber scam? Um, there's a guy that orchestrated $1 million Uber Eats scam involving credit cards, gift cards, and Walgreens in Florida. I mean, what a savage. Taylor Morgan of Lauderhill and Roy Blackwood of Broward County in Florida were arrested in August following a nearly 8-month long investigation. The fraud started in January 2022 and took place in Broward and Palm Beach counties. You don't know Florida, that's where you actually find Palm Beach as a town, and then you have Fort Lauderdale, and then south of Fort Lauderdale is Miami. But Broward's big city is Fort Lauderdale. Palm Beach is the big city in Palm Beach County. And Morgan would use the Uber Eats app and act as the customer and the courier. He'd place a grocery order, and a consumer would come pick up under a fake account and then accept the order as the courier, according to the deputies. Uber would provide Morgan with a pre-authorized and preloaded credit card to make the purchases. Then, as the consumer, he would cancel the order and buy a gift card with the Uber credit card, investigators said. They would have had times to travel 27 different Walgreens in one day. The total uh, add up was about $5,000 lost for Uber. Here, there's a
Arresting two
video.
men for allegedly scamming Uber Eats out of $1 million. Local 10's Roy Ramos is live to explain how the scheme worked. Roy.
Eden, make no mistake, this was an elaborate scheme and a well thought out one, and that's likely why these two suspects were able to get away with it for more than a year. But it's after an 8-month investigation by the Broward Sheriff's Office that scheme has now come to an end with men arrested. These are the mugshots of 21-year-old Trayon Morgan and 38-year-old Roy Blackwood. The two arrested after investigators said the partners in crime scammed the Uber ride-sharing and delivery service out of more than $1 million by using fake accounts with fabricated and stolen identities.
Morgan would create an account as a customer, and he would place an order for
It's pretty
grocery
crazy
pickup
to think that
under this fake account.
you have these guys that spent all this time to create this scam, and like I wonder what they could have done if they would have spent it trying to like actually build a business or trying to make money in a legitimate way. It might not have happened so fast, but I think the best money is the money that's earned over time and it increases. So it's pretty unique. think that, these guys spent all this time trying to scam Uber. And the truth is they probably should have spent their time trying to build a business or work for the money, honestly. Um, Last but not least on our list is people finding a whole bunch of money. I don't know if you know about the $200 million shipwreck, but it's set to be recovered from the bottom of the ocean along with its treasures, which are believed to be worth 20 billion in today's money. So there's all kinds of fights over what's down there right now and what's going on. San Jose was sunk by the British Navy in 1708 off the port of Cartagena. It will be recovered as a matter of an urgency, Colombia says. It's thought there's over 200 tons of silver and 11 million gold coins, 62 guns, and 3 masted galleon ships. There were over 600 sailors on board. All but 11 went down with the ship. So Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos said in 2015, when the wreck was discovered, that the treasure is the most valuable that has been found in the history of humanity. It was found 3,100 feet below the surface, perfectly preserved. It's pretty crazy. We It'll be brought above water before President Gustavo Petro's term ends in 2026. A U.S. salvage team, Gloca Mora, says they located it in 1981, but the Colombian government disputes that. Of course, they're going to dispute it. It's $20 billion. Colombia says they found it in 2015 in a different location. What's remained secret. Uh, Mora claims it's owed 10 billion by the Colombian government because it handed over coordinates to the Colombian authorities. Mora is suing for half the treasure, and the arbitration case is being heard in London. Now, there's some other people that want to claim to it. The indigenous people of Spain, Bolivia, Quahara Nation claims ownership as well. They say the Spanish forced their people to mine the metals and used it in the treasure 300 years ago. Now, I'd be really curious on who you think actually owns the treasure, but I'll tell you, if it was me and I was more out, I figured out how to get down to the bottom when I found it. Anyway, if you enjoy Dirty Money, make sure to give us a like below. Check for the reels. Also, download the podcast. Give us a listen. Give us a 5-star review. Really appreciate it. And that was Dirty Money.